welcome to another inspirational segment here on the Destiny Page channel. Thank you for tuning in. Have you been experiencing difficulties and challenges as a result of being from a single-parent home, for the community in which you're being raised, or for the cultural group with which you identify? What is your mindset today? Are you having doubts about your future? Do you think it's impossible to succeed? Well then, join me on this truly inspirational journey as I chat with lawyer, city councillor, and deputy mayor, Steve Anderson. So Steve, talk to me about your journey leading up to becoming the deputy mayor of Shelburne.
Wow, the journey for me started way back in an area I call Jane and Finch. It was really there the journey began, where I really started to form who I was as a person and what I wanted to be and what I wanted to do for my community. And so, it was birthed, I would say, right in Jane and Finch. So, the path to becoming the deputy mayor wasn't a paved path. I think sometimes people look at the finished product and they see where I'm at right now and they think, oh geez, Steve, your life must have been quite easy, but it was quite the opposite. Growing up in Jane and Finch, single parent household, 5 brothers, 1 sister, I could assure you life wasn't easy at all. When you think about the reputation of the community, as many people thought that nothing good could come from Jane and Finch. Just like in the Bible, nothing good would come from Nazareth. That was sort of how the media covered the area. So the odds, certainly as a minority, let me not fail to mention that as well, were definitely against me and my family. And it was by the grace of God that I was able to continue to push forward and get to, where I'm at right now. When I was in, for those who are probably wondering, I have certain challenges and roadblocks in my way. Is it possible to overcome and be, Steve, where you are or even better? And the answer to that is absolutely yes. When I was in Jane and Finch, I hardly tell this story, but I'll share this with the audience, that when I went to Topcliffe Public School, I was reading at a grade 5, I was in grade 5 rather, I was reading at a grade 12 level. And I remember when I eventually graduated there and went to Oakdale Junior High, again in Jane and Finch, immediately I was put into ESL, English Second Language. And I must admit that there was a sense of embarrassment, because I remember in homeroom there would be a knock on the door and the teacher would come and get me and say, Steve, you have to come with me. And I remember hearing the students whispering and maybe some even chuckling as they wondered where I was going. And in a moment like that, you tend to maybe second guess yourself, wonder whether you're worth it, whether you're smart enough, etc. But I stayed the course, and I stayed the course not only by my own determination, but I had people around me. The teacher, which I'll never forget, Mr. Lin, as I went and I was reading with him, I remember one day he said to me, Steve, you shouldn't be here. You should actually be in advanced. So not general, but right at the very top at advanced. And he said, look, Steve, go to the guidance counselor office and let them know that I said that you should be in advance. And so, of course, I went with all the enthusiasm one could go with, feeling vindicated that I was going to be where I belonged finally. And I remember speaking to the teacher there. I remember her pulling my file from the cabinet and rifling through the papers. And then she paused and looked dead in my eyes. And my eyes were full of enthusiasm, just waiting for her to say, yes, Steve, go. And she looked at me and she said, Steve, unfortunately, I believe you're a C student at best. I don't think you can make it in advance. And if you want to do that, you have to have your mom come down. And sure enough, my mom did come down, and the rest is history. I did get into advance and eventually graduated. But what I want to point out is success is never achieved by or on its own or by yourself. The success story that I just gave you happened because, yes, I believed in my abilities, but yet there were other people around, like the teacher, Mr. Lin, as I mentioned, that I've never forgotten, and the role of my mother coming down and also assisting me as well. So that was very important for me to overcome that challenge. And so that's why I always say to young people, make sure you surround yourself with positive people that are going to be there for you. So when you're in need, they're able to extend a hand, and always have that sense of determination that regardless of the challenges that you face, that you too could overcome.
Another big political gamble to report tonight when we come back.
We're leaving on the 31st of October.
I really pursued my education and figured out ways that I could get involved in my community. And all along, really leading up to now, I've been involved in my community, and politics became to me the next thing to do based on the community service I was already doing. And so when the opportunity came about in the community of Shelburne, I just ran with it. But prior to becoming first a counselor, I was appointed as a counselor back in 2017. And then in the recent municipal elections, I ran as a deputy mayor, and then thank God I was able to be victorious. And so now I'm currently serving as the deputy mayor for the town of Shelburne. I'm also a counselor for the county of Dufferin as well, so I'm wearing a few hats. But prior to that, it was, again, just really making my way through the Jane and Finch community. I went to the University of Windsor, got my honors degree in criminology, and then from there, I went to law school at the University of Ottawa. I graduated there, and then I was fortunate enough to land a job with the Toronto Transit Commission, working as a litigation lawyer, and I've been there now 16 years and counting.
Amazing. So talk to me about your role as deputy mayor, and how important is your role and why?
That's a great question. My role as a deputy mayor is challenging, but yet very rewarding. It's with a position like that comes a lot of responsibility, but the old saying is that's what I signed up for, and so I'm grateful that God has put me in that position to really demonstrate leadership and care and regard for the members of our community. So to me, it's a position of honor, one of pride, and certainly one that I take very seriously. And when you're in a leadership role, you really have an opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. And to me, that's what the role is all about. If I'm not making a difference in people's lives, then I'm not doing my job properly.
Certainly. So tell me about some of the demands and challenges that may arise in this kind of position.
Well, I mean, in a position like this, everybody wants you to answer their calls and to resolve all the issues that they have. And so quite frankly, it's a challenge. But it's a challenge that I'm certainly up for. And I think at this point, I've been able to meet by and large. You have your own goals. The community has their goals and things that they want done. And, the challenge is really trying to make all of that happen in the time frame that you're in office. So those are some of the challenges, but again, it's not something that can't be overcome.
Certainly. And alongside the mayor, what are some of the positive impacts you've had on the Shelburne community as a team?
Yeah, so the mayor and I, Wade Mills, we filed our nomination papers together, and before we filed, we had spoken about our vision for the Shelburne community and what we really wanted it to look like. And one of the key things were, that the community be inclusive, that it continues to be diverse and welcoming to all of our residents, and that we celebrate the richness of the diversity that we have. And from the very beginning, we put forward initiatives to recognize the richness of the diversity that we have in our town. I'm a firm believer that a community is made up of much more than how good your roads are and how good your water is and your sewage. Those things are important, but members of the community need to feel welcomed and that they belong and that they're celebrated when celebration is required. And so these are the things that we've demonstrated from a leadership standpoint, and I believe that it's trickled down where I firmly believe, just based on what I've heard, whether being in Shelburne, outside of Shelburne, there's an excitement about Shelburne. There's a feeling that it's a place that people want to call home. I will add that the Shelburne community is the fastest growing community based on the federal 2016 or 17 census, is the fastest growing town in Ontario and the second fastest in Canada. And the reason for that are several. One is that from a leadership standpoint, we've ensured that our community remains welcoming and, again, diverse, and that there are opportunities for all. Affordability, of course, and then the people is what makes the community. And I think we've really done a good job of making sure that our community is one where the people who live there are happy to live there, and those who are not living there yet certainly want to come and live there.
Wonderful. What would you say causes you to stand out and sets you apart as deputy mayor?
Oh, wow. What causes me to stand out? Well, I mean, I hope what's causing me to stand out is my service to the community and the way I conduct myself with professionalism and integrity. I think the way that God would want me to conduct myself, considering that He's put me in this position. So I would hope that, and as a Christian, as a self-identifying Christian, I think it's our responsibility to stand out and to be counted and to show care and regard for our neighbors, as the Bible would say. So if I hope that's what it is, and certainly the things that I've done in the community and things that I hope to continue to do for the community, and if that's what allows me to stand out, then I'm certainly grateful for it.
Wonderful, wonderful. And I know that there are challenges and demands that come with your job, as you've said earlier, and there are definitely rewards. It's a rewarding role as well. How do you explain the rewards that it brings you?
Listen, anytime you have an opportunity to help someone in need, that in itself is a huge reward. Again, the position is about service.
Yes.
And it's about improving the lives of other people. It's not simply improving your life. And yes, it's not that your life is not improved, but the focus is really improving the lives of others. So when people are able to find employment to take care of their families, when people feel that they're safe in their community, when you've resolved issues that matter to members of your community and they come back and tell you, hey, listen, thank you for the job that you've done, we really appreciate it. These are the things that are rewarding. But I think most importantly, you feel, again, I bring in the Christian element to it. When you're doing what you believe is God's work, even if man doesn't applaud you, you know that God is blessing you for what you've done. And so that's really, really what drives me, is me waking up every day and believing that I'm doing what God wants me to do and what I need to be doing, and allow that to guide my source of or my sense of direction and sort of how I comport myself.
Right. And so juggling your work as a lawyer, a deputy mayor,
Mm-hmm.
and keeping up with your personal life as well. How do you stay inspired and motivated? Does it go back to your foundation in God, or?
Yes. I mean, there's a saying in church, the work is plenty, but the laborers are few. And what keeps me motivated is the fact that there's more work to be done. There's more families and people that need to be reached and helped, and that's what keeps me going. So there's really, just like in our Christian journey, there's never a retirement. There's always work to be done. Our sleeves have to be constantly rolled up and be prepared to work. And that's how I see this. And so the only time that there's really rest is when, you're no longer around, or until God comes, again, looking at it from the Christian perspective. So what motivates me is that the fact that the need is still there. And as long as I can, I want to be able to fulfill those needs and help people as much as I can.
And that's wonderful. And that's, as a part of the Christian community, that's one thing we have come to know about you, Steve, is that you are a very genuinely good person, good-hearted human being. You do care genuinely for people and love people, and you're an honest man. And one of the things I admire, along with a lot of other people from the Christian community, is your level of humility, having accomplished so much. And still, we find you to be such a humble man today, and we really and truly appreciate you. And I want to say to you that you are destined for greatness.
Oh, I appreciate that. It's important not to change who you are just because of what you become. The same Steve I was yesterday should be the same Steve I am today, by the way of what people have grown to know about me. And I don't think we should allow our positions or our titles or our fame or our money or whatever it may be to change who we are. And I'm always reminded that when God places you somewhere, He could easily remove you if you're not doing what you ought to be doing. And so what keeps me humble is knowing that at any point in time, this could be taken away. Mm-hmm. And so, it's to draw people to you, whether personally or spiritually, it's you have to show yourself as you said, being genuine and caring, and that's what allows people to want to follow you and to gravitate to you. There's no way that anyone in that community would have voted for me if they didn't feel a sense of connection, they didn't feel a sense that this person could be trusted and that he's going to uphold the office that we're going to put him in, with the sort of integrity and professionalism that it deserves. And it's the same thing with God. He allows you there. I mean, the people voted me in, God has appointed me. And just like the people at the end of my term could say, Steve, we're removing you from office, so could God. And so that should really, certainly in this atmosphere, should really remind individuals, as it reminds me that as fast as you could climb is just as fast on the way down. And so, you know, I'd like to believe that that keeps me humble, but certainly my humble upbringings. You know, coming from Jane and Finch, I understand what it's like not to have much. And just because you have a little more, it doesn't mean that you should change who you are.
And it's just amazing. It takes great wisdom to recognize that. Not everyone is as humble, and positions and power come along. Tell me also, Steve, about you being the first Black person to at TTC as a lawyer and appointed deputy mayor. Tell me about those.
Yeah, you know, it's when God opens doors, He opens doors, and for me, I was very fortunate for God to open those doors. Yes, as you pointed out, when I got hired as a lawyer with the TTC, I learned that the TTC opened their doors, I believe, in the 1950s. I think there's a photograph at Yonge and Davisville on the wall, which shows what the TTC and the people looked like back in the 1950s. And I got called to the bar in 2004 and hired by the TTC as a full-time lawyer in 2004. So since the 1950s until now, I've been the only Black lawyer that's ever been hired in the history of the TTC. And I don't say that with a badge of honor or a sense of pride. I'm not expecting people to slap me on the shoulder and lift me up. It's a reality of the situation, and my only hope and goal is that I will not be the last. And I feel a sense of pride and honor that to be put in that position, that where people will look at me and say, if Steve, we've hired Steve, he's proven himself, and so hopefully that will open their eyes to extend an opportunity to somebody else. So if you're in a situation where you're one of one, a person of color in a predominantly, let's say, environment where there's not a lot of people of color, you know, make sure you conduct yourself in a way where they will look at you and through you will extend a hand to others. So yes, as you mentioned, the first Black lawyer at the TTC, when I became a counselor for the town of Shelburne, I became the first Black appointed counselor in their history. And when I got elected as deputy mayor, once again, I became the first deputy mayor in the history of Shelburne. I also mentioned, and if I didn't, a counselor with the county of Dufferin, which includes Shelburne, Orangeville, Mono, a whole slew of different municipalities. And you serve on that council if either A, you're an elected mayor or you're an elected deputy mayor. So that's the reason why I now sit with that county within that region as a counselor, again, only for mayors and deputy mayors. And in that council itself, they have never had a Black appointee sitting at that table in their history as well. And so, again, when you believe, you surround yourself with the right people, and God is opening doors for you, anything is possible, regardless of whether you look there and it doesn't seem possible. When you believe, God will make it possible.
That's awesome. Quite a journey you've had, Steve. And you have been the trailblazer, I would say, for a lot or some who may come after you. We remain amazed by you, Steve, with this level of humility and what you have accomplished. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much for your time today.
Thank you for the interview. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and I wish you all the very best.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.